Hi there. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this Returning to the Calm Center online course with me, Steve Taylor. It's great that you could join the course. And over the next 5 sessions, I'm going to take you on a journey of spiritual awakening. We're going to look into what I think are the 5 most important elements of spiritual awakening. And we're going to cultivate a state of spiritual wakefulness by focusing on those elements and moving closer to the essence of our being. And let me first of all explain what I mean by the calm center. Now, the calm center, as I use it in my book, The Calm Center, has 2 meanings. And the first meaning refers to the present moment. The calm center is the present moment. If you think about it, when we're in a state of mental turmoil, it's usually or almost always connected to the future or the past. When we think about the future, we feel anxiety. When we think about the past, we may feel bitterness or guilt. So future is strongly related to fear and anxiety, and the past is strongly related to negative emotions like guilt and regret and bitterness. So usually there's an element of time in all of our psychological turmoil. And one thing we can do to transcend that turmoil is to move into the present. So the present is the calm center between the future and the past. And in the present, there is no turmoil. There is no fear or anxiety. There is no regret or guilt. There is only our experience of the present. And the present is always neutral. It always just is. So when we're in a state of turmoil, we can always return to the present, bring our attention to our present experience, to our surroundings, and to our sensations and perceptions. And when we do that, we always move away from the turmoil into a state of calmness. Well, let me illustrate that by reading a poem from the Calm Center, which is called The Only Place. The only place. When the present is full of dread and the past is full of regret, where can you take refuge except in the present? When maelstroms of tormenting thoughts push back the barricades of your sanity, the present is the calm center where you can rest. And slowly, as you rest there, your niggling thoughts and fears dissolve, like shadows shrinking under the midday sun, until you don't need refuge anymore. The present is the only place where there is no thought-created pain. The present is the only place. So that's one meaning of the term calm center. The present is like the eye of a hurricane, where we can always rest in the midst of turmoil. And as the poem suggests, when we do that, we find that the turmoil naturally fades away because it's based on the illusion of the future and the past. But now the second meaning of the calm center is the calm center of our own being. It's the essence of our being which lies beneath the turbulence of thoughts and emotions, which lies beneath all of the psychological attachments we accumulate and which obscure our being. Underneath all that, there is always the calm center of our being. So spiritual development means both those things. It means moving into a state of presence, and it means connecting to the calm center of our own being. And the calm center is always there. The calm center of our being is always there as our true nature, our deepest nature, even when our minds are so full of turbulence that we can't sense it. But just below the turbulence, the calm center is always there. And let me illustrate that now with a short meditation or visualization. I sometimes compare our being or our mind to the sea. So the surface of our minds is often full of turbulence, like the sea. The surface of the sea is full of the roaring of waves, the swelling and foaming, and the powerful momentum of the waves. And that turbulence can be very strong. It can seem to overwhelm us sometimes, but always just underneath the turbulence, there are the depths of the sea. There is the stillness of the sea. So as soon as you dive below the surface, you're suddenly in the midst of these incredible depths of stillness which stretch all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. So just close your eyes for a second and just picture in your mind a turbulent surface of the sea. Maybe you can see the roar of the waves, hear the roar of the waves, you can see the swelling motion of the waves, the foam splashing everywhere, the constant motion of the water. And you can feel the turbulence of the sea. And just make an association between that turbulence and your thoughts. Thoughts and emotions can be turbulent, just like the surface of the sea. But now, allow yourself to dive beneath the surface of the sea, beneath the surface of your mind, beneath your thoughts. Allow yourself to dive below and feel yourself going below, down into the depths of your being. And suddenly, you're in the midst of harmony and stillness and peacefulness as you go down. Silence and peacefulness and harmony stretching all the way down into the depths of your being. And if you look up, you can still see the surface of the sea. You can still see the waves way up there on the surface. But you're not disturbed by them. You can just watch them without being disturbed. And the same with your thoughts. If you're in a place of stillness, you can just watch the thoughts pass by without being disturbed. So just for a few moments, just rest there in the depths of your being, in the stillness of your deep being below the surface. And now, let's return our attention to the sounds in this room, to the chair you're sitting on, and let's open our eyes again. So I think it's always useful to remember that at any moment when we're in a a state of mental turbulence, we're always free to dive below the surface into the stillness of our deeper being. It's always there. And all we need to do is allow ourselves to fall into that stillness, like a diver diving below the surface of the sea. So the calm center is always there, just below the surface of our minds, in the same way that the calm center of the present is always there. So as I said at the beginning, in this course, I'm going to take you on a journey of spiritual awakening. And we're going to look at different elements of spiritual awakening. And some of these elements are mentioned on the slides. So it's handy if you have a copy of a PDF of the slides from this session on your computer. If you have it in your computer, you can just open it as we go along. Unfortunately, on YouTube, we're not able to show slides within the session itself. But on the slides, I mentioned different elements of spiritual awakening, which we're going to look at. And the first one, which we're going to look at a bit later today, is disidentifying with your thoughts and emotions. Or you could call it decentering from your thinking self, realizing that you're not your thinking self, that you have a deeper identity. And the element we're going to look at next week, in the next session, is presence, cultivating presence and learning to be and to be aware in the present moment. That's the second element. In the third session, we're looking into dissolving psychological attachments, which is also a very important element of spiritual awakening, which features in every spiritual tradition. And then in the fourth week, we're looking into acceptance, cultivating acceptance, which is another very important element of spiritual awakening. So those are the first four elements we're going to look at. But let me say something about spiritual awakening itself, because obviously terms like enlightenment and awakening are used a lot. But sometimes it's not so clear what we actually mean when we use those terms. So what does spiritual awakening actually mean? Well, to me, it means an expansive state of awareness. It means a process of awakening and opening in which we experience an identity shift and a new, higher functioning self seems to take over. And actually, if you look at the worksheet which was sent to you to accompany this session, there is a list of the different characteristics of the state of spiritual wakefulness. So you can see some of the most important characteristics on that sheet. And these were the findings from my years of research in transpersonal psychology, my years of research into the state of wakefulness. So you can see some of the most important characteristics are intense perception, which means that for awakened individuals, the world seems a more vivid and real place. The world seems more fascinating and beautiful, and there is a sense of wonder and a sense of awe about the world around us. A bit like poets and artists, even scientists often have that sense of awe and wonder about the world. And also, one of the most important characteristics is a sense of connection. So in the normal human state, there's a tendency to feel that we are separate individuals and the world around us exists in duality to us. The world is out there, we are in here, and there's a boundary between us and the world. But in the wakeful state, that boundary fades away and we experience a sense of connection, even a sense of oneness with the world around us and the whole cosmos. There is no duality, there is no separation. And you can read the characteristics on the sheet, but maybe one more characteristic I'll mention is that awakened individuals don't tend to have a sense of group identity. They don't feel that they belong to any specific category or any specific group. They don't have a sense of ethnic identity. They don't have a sense of religious identity, political identity. So they don't feel that they are white people, Afro-Caribbean people, Christians or Muslims. They have no need for group identity. And if they have any identity at all, they just feel that they are members of the human race and that there is no distinction between them and any other member of the human race, no matter what these superficial differences may appear to be. There is a sense of oneness with the whole of the human race that goes beyond any distinctions of ethnicity, race, religion, or any of those superficial distinctions. And I think one of the myths I found about spiritual awakening, one of the ideas about spiritual awakening which my research has contradicted is that awakening is usually a blissful and easy process, and that spiritual awakening means entering this marvelously blissful and easy and perfect realm of existence where there are no problems and all difficulties fade away. So I found that that's not often the case. In fact, usually spiritual awakening can be quite a difficult process. But in some ways it depends on how awakening occurs. I found in my research that there are 3 different modes of spiritual awakening. So awakening can be natural, first of all. That's when people are just born in a state of wakefulness, or they just develop a state of wakefulness as they enter adulthood. It remains their normal state. So people who are naturally awake, they don't need to follow spiritual practices. They don't need to have a sudden experience of transformation because they're already in an innate state of wakefulness. And these people often become poets, they become artists, painters, or they become very idealistic individuals who have a strong desire to make the world a better place in some way, to help their human beings. And the second mode in which wakefulness can occur is gradual wakefulness. That's when people follow spiritual paths and practices in order to expand their state of being and to cultivate a new state of being. And often these people have an impulse, they have a feeling that their awareness as it is, or their state of being as it is not how they should be. There's a sense that something's incomplete, something's not quite right about their normal state of being. So they follow spiritual paths and practices to cultivate gradual wakefulness, to slowly allow a new self to be born inside them. And that's probably, I guess, gradual wakefulness is probably the most common way in which people experience the impulse to awaken. But thirdly, there is sudden and dramatic spiritual awakening, which often occurs, or usually occurs, in the midst of psychological turmoil. So in session 3, we're going to look at some examples of this, where people were in a state of intense turmoil due to depression, bereavement, addiction, and many other types of turmoil. But in the midst of their turmoil, when everything was lost, when they felt they couldn't continue, they experienced a sudden shift of being, and a new self seemed to be born inside them. The old self seemed to fade away, and suddenly a new self emerged, like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. And in my research, I found many, many cases of spiritual awakening occurring in that way, in the midst of turmoil. So those are the three ways in which it can occur. There's natural wakefulness, there's gradual wakefulness, and there's sudden and dramatic awakening. And of those three different modes, both natural wakefulness and sudden wakefulness can cause some difficulties. Gradual wakefulness is usually a fairly easy process because it's so gradual that there's time for integration, there's time for adjustment. But in dramatic wakefulness, sudden wakefulness, there's sometimes a period of upheaval and disturbance. Because the awakening is so sudden and dramatic, it's a bit like an earthquake, which causes disturbance to the mind and to the being. And there's also sometimes a sense of confusion, because when people have this experience of sudden awakening, they usually don't have a background in spiritual traditions, so they don't understand what's happened. They know they've undergone a shift and they feel great, they feel exhilarated. They feel this amazing sense of connection and serenity and this powerful sense of revelation. But at the same time, there's a sense of confusion, a sense of disorientation. And that can take, sometimes years to fade away completely, the disturbances and the disorientation. And in natural wakefulness, the difficulty sometimes is understanding ourselves, particularly if our culture doesn't understand or support spiritual wakefulness or spiritual awakening. There can be a sense of confusion, and there can be a long process of finding out who we are. That was probably what happened in my case. I would say that I'm somebody who was naturally awake, and my wakefulness, I became aware of it when I was maybe 16, 17 years old, when I would feel these powerful experiences of connection, these powerful experiences of serenity, and this marvelous sense of expansiveness and stillness in my being. But at the same time, I didn't understand why I was so different to everybody else. I didn't understand why I couldn't fit in and do the things which other young kids were doing, or which other teenagers were doing. And it took me quite a long time to accept myself and understand myself. When I was in my early 20s, I began to discover spirituality and mysticism. And then suddenly it was like, yes, this is where I am, this is who I am. I had this sense of being at home and finding out who I was. Suddenly I had this framework which made sense of, which explained why I was so different and why I couldn't live the way other people were living and the way my family expected me to live. And after that, there was a process of integration, a process of integrating my wakefulness into other areas of my life. And it took several years, probably until the age of 28 or 29, before my wakefulness was fully integrated. So now I'd like to read a poetic piece called The Core, which illustrates what I've just been talking about. So this is The Core. It can take a whole lifetime to become yourself. Years of feeling adrift and alone. Acting in a role you were never meant to play. Stammering in a language you weren't meant to speak. Wearing clothes that don't fit. Trying to pass yourself off as normal, but always feeling clumsy and unnatural. like a stranger, pretending to be at home, knowing that everyone can sense your strangeness and resent you because they know you don't belong. But slowly, through years of exploration, you see landmarks that you recognize, hear vague whispers that seem to make sense, strangely familiar words, as if you had spoken them yourself, and ideas that resonate deep down as if you already knew them. And slowly, your confidence grows, and you walk faster, sensing the right direction, feeling the magnetic pull of home. And now you begin to excavate, to peel away the layers of conditioning, to shed the skins of your flimsy false self, to discard those habits and desires that you absorbed, until you reach the solid rock beneath, the shining molten core of you. And now there's no more uncertainty. Your path is clear. Your course is fixed. This bedrock of your being is so firm and so stable that there's no need for acceptance, no fear of exclusion or ridicule. Everything you do is right and true, deep and whole, with authenticity. But don't stop. This is only the halfway point, maybe even just the beginning. Once you've reached the core, keep exploring but more subtly. Keep excavating but more delicately. And you'll keep unearthing new layers, finding new depths, until you reach the point that is no point, where the core dissolves and the solid rock melts like ice, and the self loses its boundary and expands to encompass the whole. A self even stronger and truer, because it's no self at all. A self you had to find so that you could lose it. So now, let's move on to the first element of spiritual awakening, which we're going to focus on. And this is what you could say is the fundamental or the most basic element of spiritual awakening. It's the point where awakening begins. It's the point where we step outside our normal ego self and realize who we really are. It's the point where we stop being immersed in an illusory world of ideas and thoughts and concepts and daydreams and associations and anxieties, and we begin to sense that there is another deeper aspect of our being which is more authentic and more fundamental. And this is what is referred to as disidentification. And one way of looking at it is that we have this stream of thoughts, this stream of associations which runs through our minds practically all the time when our minds are not occupied. When our minds are occupied with tasks or activities or distractions, when we're watching TV or busy doing our jobs or chores, usually our mind is focused elsewhere, But when our mind is not focused externally, we become aware of the associations spinning through our minds. Daydreams about the future or daydreams about alternative realities, memories of the past, recollections of past events, feelings of anxiety about the future, and so forth. And most people are so caught up in this stream of thoughts that they can't separate themselves from them. They think they are this thinking self. And as a result, one effect of this is that their thoughts determine their moods. So their moods are very changeable depending on what they're thinking. If they think about something they're looking forward to, or if they have a pleasant memory about the past, they feel good for a moment. But then there is an anxious thought about the future or a feeling of guilt or regret about the past, and suddenly they're in a negative state. So their mood is continually fluctuating according to their thoughts. And there's also a constant sense of disturbance too. There's no sense of inner stillness because this whirlwind of thought is continually spinning through our minds. But the best way of thinking, maybe thinking is a bad term to use, the best way of looking at this associational stream of thinking is to see it as a process. It's just a process like, there are processes in our body like digestion, the flowing of blood, the circulation of the blood. And in a way, thinking is just a similar process. It seems to be a kind of quirk of the mind, a kind of neurological or psychological quirk, which creates this constant stream of spinning thoughts. And if we think of it as a process, like a kind of physiological process, on the one hand, we accept it. On the other hand, we don't identify with it. I mean, we don't identify with digestion. We don't identify with breathing or the circulation of the blood. So we don't need to identify with our thoughts. It's just a simple neurological or physiological process. And that's what we're going to do now. And I'm going to read another poetic piece. This is called The Voice Inside Your Head. So this associational thinking creates a voice inside our heads. And we normally listen to this voice, we believe this voice, but when we step outside the process, we no longer have to take it seriously. If we think a depressing thought, we don't have to believe it. We can just think, oh, it's just a part of the process. My mind's telling me to think about this or to interpret things in this way, but I don't have to go along with it. I'm outside the process and I'm free to reject what it's telling me, its interpretations. So this is the voice inside your head. And as I read this piece, maybe you can follow the process of disidentifying with a voice, of not listening to the voice, and realizing that there is another part of you which is not affected by your thoughts, which stands apart from your thoughts. It's a static, stable place within your own consciousness. The voice inside your head. One day, you'll grow fed up with a voice inside your head, with its constant murmurings of discontent, and its fear-mongering thoughts of the future, and its questioning of every choice you make. One day, you'll turn to it and calmly say, I refuse to listen. Then stand back and look away, turning your attention to your surroundings, or to a quietness and spaciousness you can sense inside you, just behind the voice. The voice is so self-absorbed that at first it won't even notice it's being ignored and will carry on chattering away to itself. You'll still hear its complaints and criticisms, but they won't convince you anymore. You'll doubt them, smile at them, reject them. And gradually, without the fuel of your attention, the voice will become more hesitant, will stumble and slow down, leaving space, until eventually that self-assertive drawl that demanded to be heard and seemed to submerge the rest of reality will be no louder than a whisper, like a gentle breeze that seems to be part of silence. It's probably over ambitious of us to aim to cultivate a completely quiet mind. Even people who are awakened to a very intense degree, even they sometimes have thoughts. I think the way we should consider this is to, on the one hand, think of or consider thinking as a process, which we don't have to identify with, and also think of it as background noise, which the less we pay attention to it, the quieter it becomes. It's a bit like maybe having a television in another room in your house. Maybe you're downstairs in your house and the TV is on upstairs in one of the bedrooms, and you can hear it faintly humming in the background sometimes. And often you're maybe not even aware it's there, but sometimes it's there in the background, just humming away. But you don't have to give your attention to it, and you don't have to identify with it. I think usually what happens is that when we don't give our attention to our thoughts, they tend to naturally become quieter. As that poetic piece suggested, our thoughts are fueled by attention. So when we give them our attention, when we identify with them, they grow stronger, they pick up more momentum. And eventually they may be rushing through us at such a speed that we feel like we're going crazy. But if you disidentify with them, they slowly fade away, they slow down, they become quieter. And even if they don't disappear altogether, the process may be so quiet that you don't pay much attention to it. It may be just part of the overall wholeness and stillness of your being. So now, what I'd like to do for the last 15 minutes or so of this session, 10 or 15 minutes or so of this session, is to guide you through a meditative process which will help you to disidentify with your thoughts. And I'll guide you through this meditation now. And also you've been sent it, or you will be sent it as an audio file. So you can also listen to this meditation at home and practice it over the next few days before the next session. So let me guide you through what I call the Riverbank Meditation. So let's sit in a fairly alert but comfortable position in your favorite meditative posture. And just for a few moments, let's relax. And let's bring our attention to our breath, first of all. Feel how the air brushes the inside of your nose as you breathe in. Feel how it brushes your nose again as you breathe out. Feel how with each breath you become a little more relaxed. Feel how your stomach rises and falls as you breathe in and out as well. Feel the air again brushing the inside of your nose as you breathe in and out. And now that you're relaxed, I'd like you to create an image in your mind. In your mind, picture the scene of a warm summer's day, and you're sitting at the top of a riverbank. You can feel the sunshine against your skin. You can feel the light and warmth of the sun. You can smell flowers and grass around you. You can hear children playing in the distance. And you feel very still and very relaxed at the top of this riverbank, in a place of stillness, rooted to the ground. And beneath you, you can see the river flowing by. You can see the currents of the river, the splashing and foaming of the currents as they pass by. You can see the sunshine reflecting on the water, creating flashes of light. And every so often, every few seconds, a boat passes by on the water with one or two people rowing the boat, passing by. And as you watch the stream flow by, as you watch the river flow by, you're very aware that you are sitting here in a place of stillness, watching the river flow without being taken away by it. The river flows on in a constant motion, but you are rooted to the top of the riverbank in a place of stillness, in a place of peacefulness. And I'd like you to take the same perspective with the stream of your thoughts. So now within your own consciousness, I want you to feel rooted to a stable, static point within your own consciousness, as you were on the riverbank. And this is your true witnessing self, the place of your true identity, this static still point. And from here, you can watch your thoughts pass by. You can watch the stream of associations just flow by without being carried away by them. So now, if any thoughts arise in your mind, just allow them to flow by like a river, feeling yourself rooted to a still, stable point as you were on the riverbank. If any thoughts arise, just allow them to flow by. And if you feel yourself getting caught up in the thoughts, just gently move yourself away back to the still, stable point on the riverbank, the place outside your thoughts where you can watch them pass by. And as you remain rooted here, feel the space between you and your thoughts. Feel the spaciousness around your witnessing self. And feel how that space seems to expand and your thoughts seem to recede. So now, just for a few moments, let's feel ourselves rooted to that still place in our consciousness and feel the space around us which seems to expand through our own being. And now, return your attention to the chair you're sitting on, to the sounds inside this room. And when you're ready, let's open our eyes and bring this meditation to a close. So it's worth remembering that whenever you become immersed in thoughts, you're always free to gently withdraw your attention and return to the riverbank. Return to that static place where you can observe your thoughts as they pass by. And you don't need to reject your thoughts. You don't have to feel an aversion to them and try to push them away. You just need to let them pass by without identifying with them. And realizing that they can't really disturb you and they can't really affect your state of being. So I recommend that over the next few days you practice the Riverbank Meditation and listen to the audio file which you've been sent. And in addition to practicing that, just try to develop a habit of stepping outside your thoughts and becoming rooted in your true identity. And this also applies to what you could call our story. I'd like to finish this session by reading another piece from the Calm Center, which is called The Story. And in the same way that we become identified with our thoughts, we also become identified in a much more general way with the story, the story of our lives. The past history of events and experiences which gives us a sense of identity. But the problem is that when we identify with our story, we stop living in the moment because the story is always based in the past. And the more we identify ourselves with the past, the less present we become. And in a sense, whatever happened in the past doesn't matter, it's gone. All that we know is the present, our present experience. And our concept of ourselves, which is based on our story, may be a fiction. And we're always free to let go of the story and give ourselves wholly to the present tense. So this final poetic piece illustrates the freedom we can gain by letting go of our story. The story. Your story is always there if you need to remind yourself of who you are, like a stream flowing beside you that you can always step into and swim with for a while. Whenever you lose direction or feel vulnerable and need to refresh your sense of self. And when you're flowing with that stream of memories, you might feel proud of how far you've come to this moment of bright achievement. Look back upstream and smile with vindication at the fools who slighted or doubted you. Or you might ache inside with failure, looking back at the meandering muddy tracks that have only led to a place of pain. Or you can let the stream flow by and accept this moment in its wholeness, without reference to any other, before or after. You can sit and observe outside the story, not as a character, but as the author, grounded in another identity that was never created and doesn't need a plot or conclusion, because it's already complete. So the true witnessing self inside us doesn't need a story to reinforce its identity, and it has no story because it only exists in the present. So that true witnessing self is the same self which observes our thoughts. It exists outside the past, outside any concepts, and outside any associational thoughts. So as I say, over the next few days, practice the Riverbank Meditation, and you can also practice living in the moment rather than in terms of your story. If you ever feel as though you're getting caught up in any concepts about your identity, about who you are, based on past experiences, just bring your attention into the present and allow them to fade away. So thank you very much. This is the end of the first session of returning to the Calm Center. So I look forward to seeing you in the second session, where we look into presence in more detail. All best wishes and blessings from me, Steve Taylor. Thank you.